Friends and colleagues, announced Cashin Hale, the CFO of Sable and Finch, as the Austin skyline glittered beyond the glass rail of our rooftop patio. Effective June 1st, our new director of strategy will be. I stopped breathing, champagne glass stalled halfway to my lips. Ethan Ward. Applause detonated around me. Phones lifted. Someone whistled. And there he was, sliding into the spotlight in a charcoal suit and a smile I used to mistake for sincerity. Ethan, my ex-fiancé, the man who left a ring on the kitchen counter and a note that read, "I'm not who you think I am." The promotion had been mine. Not officially, of course. Nothing at Sable and Finch was ever official until the ink was dry and Cashin's cufflinks had caught the light just so. But 6 months ago I'd built the market model that saved us from a catastrophic acquisition, something the board had privately called Harper's Firewall. Cashin had told me, late after one of those war room nights where the pizza boxes stack like trophies, "It's yours to lose, Harper." Apparently it was mine to watch get handed to my ex. My name is Harper Lowell, I'm 37 years old and I've spent 12 years in corporate strategy learning that hard work is the currency. Until politics starts printing its own money. I clapped with everyone else, nails biting into my palm. Ethan took the mic and thanked the leadership team for recognizing bold vision. He dropped phrases straight from my deck. Adjacency capture, resilience premium, contracyclical moat. The words sounded strange in his mouth, like a tourist trying to pass as local. A junior analyst brushed by me. "Harper," she whispered, "did you know?" I smiled the way women smile when we know showing teeth is safer than showing fury. "I do now." When the speeches faded into networking chatter, I slipped away, heels ticking against concrete, down the service stairs that smelled faintly of citrus and printer ink. In my office the air felt cooler, as if the building itself knew to keep quiet. I shut the door, pulled my phone from my blazer and scrolled past family, past friends, past the folder labeled "Don't." I tapped a name I hadn't used in 2 years. Monica Reyes. Employment attorney. I'd met her at a Women in Business panel in Dallas, where she'd said in her unblinking way, "Document what they praise you for because one day they'll call it a team effort." I'd bought her coffee after just to keep that voice in my corner. "Monica, it's Harper. Urgent. Corporate matter." The typing dots appeared almost instantly. "Tomorrow 9 a.m. bring everything. NDA emails, drafts, Slack logs, calendar invites. Especially praise." I exhaled for the first time since Cashin said, "New director." Praise I had in spades. Cashin's late night thank yous. "A board members, couldn't have done it without you." Ethan's "Your model is genius" text from 3 months back, followed by a "Let me polish a few slides," that in hindsight was a lockpick. I set the phone down and looked out at downtown, the river cutting a dark ribbon under the bridges. Austin's traffic purred like a faraway ocean. In the glass my reflection stared back, hair pinned up like I meant business, lipstick the color of stubborn fruit. I thought about the ring on my kitchen counter the day Ethan left, about the careful way I'd folded the note and tucked it into a drawer I never opened, about how grief taught me to go to work anyway. My laptop chimed. Calendar update. Strategy team all hands. Tomorrow 8:30 a.m. Ethan's name sat under host. I clicked the invite details and felt the heat rise in my chest. Attached agenda. Q2 roadmap, based on Harper's framework. No attribution. No mention. Just the theft tidied up. I forwarded the invite to myself from my personal email, CC'd a folder I named Lodestar. Then I dragged in the original doc properties for my model, screenshots of comments with my initials, timestamps, email chains that began with "Great Instincts, H. Everything neat. Everything true. I wasn't going to rage. I was going to record. The door rattled softly and before I could answer it, Ethan slid inside like he still had permission. "Harper," he said, closing it with his shoe voice pitched for concern. "I wanted to talk before the rumor mill starts." I didn't offer him a seat. "Congratulations." He glanced around my office. The whiteboard littered with arrows, the shelf of case studies, the ceramic mug a client's kid had painted for me, then back at me. "This wasn't my call," he said. "Cashin wanted someone with external presence." His eyes flicked over me, my dress, my unadorned neckline, as if presence were something you could hang around your throat. "External presence," I repeated. "Did they also want someone with my analysis?" His smile barely moved. We're a team. We were, I said. Then you left. A muscle in his jaw ticked. Let's not make this personal. You already did. He took a breath like he was about to step onto a stage. Look, you and we want the same thing. For the company to succeed. There's room for both of us to win here. I thought of Monica's message, of tomorrow at 9 a.m., of all the ways winning gets defined by men like Cashin and men like Ethan. I smiled finally because I had learned something in the years since Ethan walked out. They count on your silence more than on their own talent. There will be room, I said. Just not the way you think. He watched me for a moment, trying to read the script he assumed I'd follow. Then he nodded back toward the door and put his hand on the knob. I'll see you at the all hands. You will, I said. When the door clicked shut, I slid my phone back into my palm. Confirmed for tomorrow, I typed to Monica. And Monica? He's not who he thinks he is either. Outside, the rooftop laughter drifted down like confetti. Inside, I opened the Lodestar folder and began. Monica Reyes's office overlooked the stretch of Congress Avenue that still held some of old Austin, brick facades wedged between glass towers, a taco truck parked defiantly in front of a bank. Inside, the air was cool and deliberate, scented faintly with leather and bergamot. She stood when I entered, all 5'0" of her in a crimson blazer that looked sharp enough to cut glass. Harper, she said, clasping my hand like we were sealing a pact. You brought the good stuff? I set my laptop and a thick manila folder on the table between us. Emails. Deck drafts. Metadata from my model. Board comments. Calendar invites. Praise as requested. Monica smiled, not warmly but like a chess player who sees the endgame before the pawns move. She flipped open the folder and began scanning, her pen tapping out a rhythm. Ethan Ward, she murmured, reading a printed email chain. You kept the "your model is genius" text. Good. I sank into the chair opposite her. I'm assuming genius doesn't hold up in court? It holds up in leverage, she said. The law loves paper. Or pixels that behave like paper. This, she held up a printout of a slide with my initials in the corner, is authorship. This, she tapped an email from Cashin thanking me for saving the acquisition, is reliance. And this, she slid over the calendar invite Ethan had sent, is appropriation. I watched her arrange the pieces the way she separated them into neat stacks. Proof of creation. Proof of recognition. Proof of theft. So, I asked, what are we talking? Lawsuit? Press? Internal complaint. Monica leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. Internal complaint is for people who want to stay. Do you want to stay? The question caught me off guard. I thought of the view from my office window, the hum of the strategy floor, the sense of purpose I'd carved out from years of late nights and hard data. And then I thought of Ethan standing at the mic, spooling my work into his resume. I want my name back, I said finally. And I want him to know he didn't win. Her eyes narrowed in approval. Then we skip the HR puppet show. We go direct to the board. Demand acknowledgement of your authorship, a public correction, and, if you're feeling bold, a severance package that says, thank you in 6 figures. I blinked. You think they'd pay me to leave? They'll pay you to keep quiet, she said flatly. Especially if I show them how your work underpins Ethan's entire Q2 roadmap. If that roadmap tanks, it's not his name on the origin docs, it's yours. They can't afford for you to go public about how they rewarded theft. I thought about that. About the weight of silence when it's paid for. About whether I could live with it if it meant walking away clean. Monica slid a legal pad toward me. Write down every instance where Ethan or Cashin credited you privately but not publicly. Names, dates, exact words if you remember them. I began writing, the pen carving grooves into the paper. Cashin, January 12th. You're the only reason we didn't sign that merger. Board member Helen Coyle, February 3rd. Harper, your diligence is a masterclass. Ethan, March 19th. Your model is genius. Let me polish a few slides. When I looked up, Monica was watching me like a hawk. We'll start with a demand letter to the board. Clear, precise, and ugly enough that they'll want it to vanish. If they balk, we escalate. Press, lawsuit, SEC whistleblower. But the first strike is surgical. Her phone buzzed and she glanced at the screen. I have a lunch with a CEO who thinks NDAs are a personality trait. You good to send me those digital files tonight? Yes, I said, closing the folder. Monica, what happens if Ethan finds out I'm doing this? Her smile was all teeth. Then he learns the first rule of taking credit for someone else's work. She slid the folder back to me. You'd better be able to prove you can do it twice. Outside, the sun was already tilting west, casting long shadows across the street. I pulled my sunglasses from my bag, stepped into the light and felt something shift in my chest. It wasn't victory. Not yet. But it was the first step toward making sure Ethan Ward's promotion came with a price tag he hadn't budgeted for. The next morning, the strategy team all hands felt like a stage play where I'd been recast without warning. The glass-walled conference room on the 12th floor was already full when I walked in. Ethan at the head of the table, Cashin lounging to his left, a projector humming softly like it knew too much. I took a seat halfway down, my laptop open, but my attention trained on Ethan. He was in his element, polished, confident, dropping corporate jargon like breadcrumbs for the board to follow. Our Q2 roadmap, he said, is rooted in a proprietary resilience framework designed to optimize market adjacency capture. I bit back a laugh. Market adjacency capture. My phrase lifted straight from the executive summary I'd written in February. The same summary Ethan had asked me to clean up before he sent it to Cashin. He clicked to the next slide and my breath caught. It wasn't just my phrasing, it was my deck. My colors, my typography, even the small alignment error in the title box I'd noticed too late but hadn't fixed. It was like watching someone wear your skin. Cashin glanced at me briefly, then back to Ethan, nodding as if hearing these ideas for the first time. Impressive, Ethan, he said. The junior analyst across from me, Lena, shifted in her chair and shot me a quick look. I could see the question in her eyes. Isn't this yours? I didn't answer. Not here. When Ethan opened the floor for clarifying questions, I raised my hand. Quick one, I said, keeping my tone light. Can you walk us through the initial modeling assumptions? Particularly the risk-weighting logic you used. Ethan hesitated, just long enough for the silence to grow teeth. Well, he began, the assumptions are detailed in the supplemental appendix. Right, I said. But since this is your roadmap, I thought you could summarize them for the group. Off the cuff. His eyes flickered. I could almost hear Monica's voice in my head. Never attack head-on in public. Just make the floor crack under them. Ethan cleared his throat. Well, the model builds on standard industry weightings. Interesting, I said, tapping my pen against my notebook. Because the model I built uses a non-standard risk curve based on historical volatility data. It's unusual. Not something you'd see in a generic template. Cashin's gaze sharpened. Lena's brows drew together. Ethan shifted his stance. We can take that offline, he said finally, moving to the next slide. I let him. The point wasn't to humiliate him. Yet. It was to plant the seed. Make Cashin wonder if the man he'd just handed a promotion to could actually run the race. When the meeting ended, Ethan made a beeline for me. What the hell was that? He hissed, voice low enough for only me to hear. A question, I said. You're the director of strategy now. People expect you to know the strategy. His jaw tightened. If you're trying to make me look bad, I don't have to try. He started to speak, then stopped as Cashin approached. Good work today, Cashin said to Ethan, but his eyes flicked to me. Harper, can we catch up later this week? One-on-one. Of course, I said, my expression neutral. Back at my desk, I opened the Lodestar folder and added a new note. Ethan unable to summarize proprietary risk-weighting model in meeting. Cashin present. Witnesses. Lena, full strategy team. The paper trail was writing itself. By Thursday, the office had developed a hum I hadn't heard in years. A quiet, electric undercurrent that meant gossip was moving faster than email. People went silent when I walked past, then darted glances at one another like they just remembered a secret. It started with Lena. She found me in the break room, pretending to fuss over the espresso machine. You didn't hear this from me, she said, voice pitched just above the hiss of steam, but 3 different VPs asked me if Ethan actually built that model. I stirred sugar into my coffee. What did you tell them? That I didn't know, she said. Which is true. But, she glanced toward the glass wall of the conference room where Ethan was holding court with 2 junior analysts. People are starting to wonder. By mid-morning my Slack pings had tripled. Little messages from colleagues I barely spoke to. Is it true you wrote the framework? He used your slides, didn't he? Cashin knows, right? I answered none of them. Instead, I took Monica's advice and kept feeding the Lodestar folder. Every Slack ping got a screenshot. Every whispered question became a time-stamped note. Around noon, I headed to the lobby cafe for lunch. That's where I saw him. Graham Patel, Senior VP of Operations, standing by the order counter with a latte in one hand and his phone in the other. Graham was a bored whisperer, one of those executives who never raised his voice but could end careers over coffee. Harper, he said, spotting me. You're the one who built that Q2 framework, right? I kept my tone careful. I contributed to the strategic modeling, yes. He studied me for a beat like he was weighing the wisdom of pushing further. It's solid work. Risk curves clever. Reminds me of something I saw in a boutique consultancy years ago. Not Ethan's style at all. I raised a brow. Interesting observation. He smiled faintly. I'll be in the board meeting Monday. If there's context I should have. He let the sentence hang unfinished like an open door. I'll keep that in mind, I said. When I returned to my desk, Ethan was leaning against my chair, scrolling through something on his phone. He didn't look up. You're talking to people, he said flatly. People talk to me, I corrected. You might want to work on that. His eyes finally met mine, cool and calculating. You're playing a dangerous game. I slid my laptop open, the Lodestar folder glowing on the desktop like a live wire. So are you, I said. Difference is I know the rules. That afternoon I sent Monica an email. Board meeting Monday. Potential ally, Graham Patel. We'll keep gathering witnesses. Her reply came fast. Perfect. Let the whispers work for you. By the time we move, they'll be primed to believe you. Friday morning started quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet where you know someone somewhere is rearranging the chessboard. By 9:15 I had my coffee, my inbox open and my game face on. That's when Lena appeared at my desk, eyes darting toward the hallway. She slid a USB drive across the surface like we were in some Cold War spy swap. You didn't get this from me, she said. I picked it up, feeling its cheap plastic edges. What is it? Something I found in the shared drive while pulling last quarter's performance metrics. Ethan's Q2 strategy framework. The final version he presented Monday. I frowned. That's not exactly groundbreaking intel. Check the document history, she said, and walked away before I could ask anything else. I plugged the drive into my laptop and opened the file. At first glance, it was exactly what I'd expected. The deck Ethan had presented in the all hands, down to the slightly off-center title box. But then I clicked into the version history. There it was. My original upload from February, complete with my user ID and timestamp. The revisions after that told the whole story in digital ink. February 16th. Harper Lowell uploads initial model framework. February 17th. Minor edits Harper Lowell. March 2nd. Polish revisions Ethan Ward. March 5th. Metadata change. Document owner switched to Ethan Ward. I stared at the screen, pulse ticking in my ears. The ownership change wasn't subtle. It was manual. Someone had gone into the system and reassigned the file to Ethan's account. Monica's voice echoed in my mind. The law loves paper. Or pixels that behave like paper. I took screenshots of every version, saved the file in 3 separate encrypted folders. One local, one on an external drive, one in the cloud. Then I added a new note to Lodestar. File ownership manually altered on March 5th to assign authorship to Ethan Ward. Digital evidence preserved. At 11 o'clock, Cashin's assistant appeared at my desk. Harper, he'd like to see you in his office. Cashin's corner office had floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city like a painting. He gestured to the seat across from his desk. I've been hearing noise, he said. About Q2. About your role in the framework. I kept my posture relaxed. There's always noise before a big quarter. He studied me for a long moment. Ethan says you're undermining him. I'm documenting my work, I said. That's not undermining. That's accuracy. Cashin tapped his pen against the desk. Look, Harper, the optics here are bad for everyone. If you have concerns, bring them to me, not to the team. I almost laughed. Bring them to you, the man who just let my ex walk off with my promotion. Instead, I said, noted. When I left his office, I didn't go back to my desk. I went outside, down the block to a bench shaded by a sycamore and texted Monica. We have a smoking gun. Version history shows manual file ownership change to Ethan. Screenshot secured. Her reply came in seconds. That's it. That's the crack in the dam. And for the first time in days I felt the tide starting to turn. Monica didn't waste time. By Saturday morning she'd already drafted a demand letter that read like a scalpel. Precise, clean, and designed to cut straight to the nerve. We met at a quiet coffee shop near Zilker Park. The kind where the tables are far enough apart that no one can eavesdrop without looking obvious. Monica slid the printed letter across the table to me. Read it, she said. The opening paragraph was polite in the way a rattlesnake is polite before it strikes. It stated in plain language that I was the original author of the Q2 framework, that I had documented proof of creation and metadata manipulation, and that the current director of strategy had presented my work as his own. Then came the demands. Immediate written acknowledgement from the board of my authorship. A public correction in the company's internal communications. A severance package equal to 1 year's salary plus bonus, with a non-disparagement clause applying equally to both sides. Deadline, 72 hours. If they failed to meet those terms, Monica would pursue all available remedies, including but not limited to notifying the SEC of potential shareholder misrepresentation. I set the letter down. You're sure we lead with severance? Not with keeping my role. Monica shook her head. Keeping your role means staying under their control. Severance means you leave with their money, their silence, and your reputation intact. You can rebuild anywhere, with this story as your ace. I sipped my coffee, considering the weight of what she was saying. Leaving Sable and Finch wasn't the plan when this started. But the more I thought about Monday's board meeting, the more I realized I didn't want to fight for a seat at their table. I wanted to build my own. What if they call my bluff? I asked. Monica's smile was razor-thin. They won't. Ethan can't survive an audit of Q2. And Cashin won't risk his own name being tied to stolen work. By noon, the letter was in the inboxes of every board member, Cashin, and the company's general counsel. Monica had sent it from her firm's domain with a subject line that made my heart race. Urgent, intellectual property misappropriation at Sable and Finch. At 2:17 p.m. my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Meet me. 6 p.m. The Driscoll Hotel lobby. It's about Ethan. No name. Just that. I stared at the screen, wondering who in this building storm was about to hand me another weapon. The Driscoll's lobby smelled faintly of polished wood and old money, the kind of place where conversations are meant to be overheard only by the ghosts in the wallpaper. I spotted him immediately. Mark Ellison, senior data analyst, sitting in an armchair that seemed too big for his wiry frame. Mark wasn't the type to send cryptic messages. He was the type to eat lunch at his desk and keep his headphones on even when the playlist stopped. Which meant whatever had dragged him out to meet me was serious. He stood as I approached, motioning to the chair across from him. Thanks for coming, he said, his voice low. You said it's about Ethan. Mark glanced around before leaning forward. You know I run the data warehouse audits, right? Every quarter, I reconcile usage logs against project files. I nodded. Well, he continued, last month I found a set of access logs that didn't match up. Someone from Ethan's account downloaded your original framework file from the restricted project directory at 1:13 a.m. on March 4th, 2 days before the ownership switch in the system. I froze. That directory requires dual authentication. Exactly. Which means Ethan either has admin access, which he doesn't, or someone with admin access gave it to him. Cashin, I guessed. Mark shook his head. No. But the logs show a secondary session ID tied to Victor Hale. The man who'd announced Ethan's promotion on the rooftop like it was a coronation. I sat back, the pieces snapping into place with an almost audible click. This wasn't just Ethan stealing my work, he'd had help from the very top. Mark slid a small envelope across the table. Printouts of the access logs plus screenshots. I shouldn't have them. If anyone asks, you didn't get them from me. I tucked the envelope into my bag. Why are you giving me this? He hesitated. Because I've been at this company 8 years and I've watched them bury too many people who didn't deserve it. You're the first one I've seen actually push back. I met his gaze. You know this could blow up your career. He smiled faintly. Maybe it needs blowing up. When I left the Driscoll, Congress Avenue was glowing in the last light of day. My phone buzzed. Monica. Call me. No. I ducked into a side street and answered. They responded, she said without preamble. General Counsel wants a meeting tomorrow morning. Just you, me, and 2 board members. No Cashin. No Ethan. My grip tightened on the phone. They're already cutting him out. Maybe, she said. Or maybe they just want to see how much you're willing to burn down. I thought of the envelope in my bag, the access logs with Victor Hale's name all over them. Then they're about to find out, I said. Sunday morning, the offices of Sable and Finch were deserted except for the low hum of HVAC and the faint scent of industrial cleaner. Monica and I were escorted by a security guard to a small boardroom I'd never been in before. Windowless, with a polished oval table that reflected the overhead lights like a mirror. 2 people were already waiting. Helen Coyle, the board member who'd once called my diligence a masterclass, and Richard Chon, a venture capitalist whose investment firm held a sizable stake in the company. Both stood as we entered, but there was no small talk. Helen gestured to the chairs opposite them. Let's get to it. Monica slid a slim folder onto the table. My client's position is outlined in the letter you received yesterday. We're here to answer questions before you decide how to proceed. Richard leaned forward, hands clasped. Harper, we've reviewed Ethan's presentation and your supporting documents. There's no question the original framework is yours. Helen nodded. The metadata alone is damning. What we need to understand is the context. Why would Ethan do this? And, her gaze sharpened, how much did Cashin and Victor know? I exchanged a quick glance with Monica, then reached into my bag. I can help with that. I slid the envelope Mark had given me across the table. Access logs from March 4th. Ethan's account pulled my file from a restricted directory in the middle of the night, 2 days before the file ownership was switched to his name. The secondary session ID on the download belongs to Victor Hale. Richard's brows shot up. Helen's lips tightened. Monica's voice was calm but edged with steel. This is no longer just a case of internal credit theft. If your CFO assisted in falsifying authorship of proprietary intellectual property, and your COO used that material to mislead the board about his own work, you have a governance problem that could attract regulatory scrutiny. Helen tapped the folder, her expression unreadable. If this went public, share price, investor confidence, client trust. She stopped herself, then exhaled. We need to contain this. Richard looked at Monica. What will it take for Harper to walk away quietly? Monica didn't miss a beat. Written acknowledgement of authorship from the board, an internal correction to staff, 1 year's salary plus average annual bonus, and a mutual non-disparagement clause. Payment within 5 business days. Helen's eyes flicked to me. And if we refuse? I met her gaze. Then the SEC sees everything. And maybe a few journalists I know from my MBA days get an anonymous tip. For a moment, the only sound was the low hum of the air vents. Finally, Richard sat back. Give us until tomorrow to respond. When we left the building, Monica was already on her phone. They're going to settle, she said. They just need to figure out how to do it without Cashin and Victor realizing until it's too late. I almost smiled. Good. Because I'm not done yet. Monica glanced at me. What's left? I looked back at the silent glass tower behind us, making sure Ethan knows exactly who took his crown. Monday morning, the board meeting was set for 10. By 9:15 I was at my desk, watching the flurry of suits and polished shoes moving toward the executive floor. Ethan passed by once, all swagger and cologne, pretending not to notice me. At 9:28 I forwarded an email to the entire strategy team. Subject line, for reference, Q2 Framework Origins. Inside were 3 attachments. My original February draft, complete with metadata. Screenshots of the version history. A side-by-side comparison showing Ethan's final deck and mine, identical down to the misaligned title box. No commentary. No accusations. Just proof. The ripple was instantaneous. Across the open floor, heads bent together. Slack channels lit up. I could feel the temperature in the room shift as people realized the whispers were true. At 9:46 my phone buzzed with a message from Lena. He's in the boardroom now. They've closed the blinds. By 10:12 Ethan stormed into the hallway, face tight, jacket unbuttoned like he'd pulled it off mid-argument. He spotted me and stopped, hands on hips. What the hell did you send out? I swiveled my chair to face him. Documentation. I thought the team deserved to know the foundation they're building Q2 on. You're trying to humiliate me, he said, voice low but shaking. Not trying, I said. For a moment I saw the man I used to know. Arrogant, yes, but not yet desperate. That man was gone. This one was cornered and he knew it. You think this ends with you walking away clean? He said. Cashin's furious. Victor's ready too. Victor's in enough trouble of his own, I cut in. You might want to ask him about late-night downloads from restricted directories. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, maybe even fear. He opened his mouth, but whatever he was going to say died as Helen Coyle stepped into the hallway. Ethan, she said sharply. Boardroom. Now. He glanced between us, then followed her without another word. As soon as he was gone, I pulled out my phone and texted Monica. Seed planted. He knows Victor's exposed. Let's see who he throws under the bus first. Her reply came fast. Careful. Cornered men swing wild. I slid the phone back into my desk drawer and looked out at the city skyline. Somewhere upstairs a crown was slipping. And I just made sure everyone could hear it hit the floor. By late afternoon the executive floor felt different. Quieter, heavier, like the air just before a thunderstorm. Word was spreading faster than damage control could keep up. At 3:07 p.m. my desk phone rang. The caller ID read unknown internal. I let it go to voicemail, then checked the transcript. Harper, it's Graham Patel. I think you should hear this directly. Meet me in the loading dock stairwell in 10 minutes. The loading dock was the kind of place where you could disappear inside a building. Bare concrete walls, echoing footsteps, the smell of cardboard and machine oil. Graham was already there, leaning against the railing, suit jacket draped over one arm. They're fracturing, he said without preamble. Victor's trying to blame Cashin for authorizing the file switch. Cashin's saying he thought the framework was Ethan's from the start. I folded my arms. And Ethan? Graham gave a humorless smile. Ethan's hinting to Helen that he was just acting on guidance from senior leadership. Meaning Victor. He's hoping they'll cut him a deal if he helps them bury the bigger problem. So he's flipping, I said. Trying to. But here's the thing, Helen isn't buying it. She's been talking to Richard all day. My read? They're prepping to isolate all three. It hit me then. Cashin, Victor, Ethan, the triumvirate that had run this place like their personal chessboard, were about to be left standing without a square. Where does that leave me? I asked. That's why I called you, Graham said. Helen asked me how you'd react if the board offered you a consulting contract instead of severance. 6 months, high rate, clean title in the press release. I raised a brow. So they keep me close, keep me quiet, and make it look like we're all still friends. Exactly. I thought about Monica's letter, about the 5-day payment window, about how much leverage I still had sitting in Lodestar. Tell Helen, I said, if they want me as a consultant, the severance terms still stand, full payout plus the contract. They want me to keep my mouth shut, they can pay twice. Graham's grin was quick and sharp. Knew you'd say that. He glanced at the stairwell door. You didn't hear it from me, but if they don't settle by Wednesday, Helen's ready to pull the trigger on an internal investigation. The kind that becomes public whether anyone wants it to or not. As he left, the faint sound of the freight elevator rattled through the concrete. I stayed a moment longer, letting the thought settle. The cracks weren't just showing, they were widening. And if I played this right, I could walk away not just paid, but with my name burnished while theirs fell apart. By morning the office felt staged. Too tidy, too quiet, as if someone had vacuumed the panic out of the carpets. An email from the general counsel landed in my inbox with the subject line that always means theater. Resolution proposal. Attached was a PDF on crisp letterhead, the kind designed to look inevitable. I read it once without blinking. Acknowledgement of authorship, signed by the board. Internal announcement crediting me as originator of the Q2 framework. A severance package that matched Monica's demand to the letter. And at the bottom an optional consulting contract, 6-month term, premium rate, deliverables, at the discretion of the board. So, as in, they needed me more than I needed them. Monica called before I could forward it. You saw it. I did. They folded. They calculated. You still want everything in writing before you say a word to anyone. No handshakes, no winks. Paper or it didn't happen. I smiled despite myself. I learned from the best. We agreed to meet in the afternoon to countersign with a few surgical edits. Then I closed my office door and let myself exhale. Not victory, not yet, but the edges had softened. A knock. I didn't say come in, but the door opened anyway. Then. He looked like the night hadn't slept. "I ask you." That polished veneer sanded down to something raw. "So this is it?" he asked. "You take the money and the credit and scorch the earth behind you?" I kept my hands flat on the desk. "I take back what's mine. The earth scorched itself." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "You torched my reputation." "No," I said. "You handed me the match and stood in a room full of kindling." I held his gaze. "You used my work and counted on me to stay small. That was your plan." Something inside him wavered. He tried for righteous anger and missed. "You think the board will keep you around after this?" "I don't need them to. But they need the truth on record if they want the street to breathe again." He laughed. One brittle note. "You always did love your principles. That's what kept me from becoming you." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he reached into his jacket and set a flash drive on my desk. "There's a memo on here. Victor's." He wrote down the steps for the file transfer in case we need to replicate the process. His words. Ethan swallowed. "You didn't get it from me." I studied the drive. "Why give me this?" "Because I'm tired," he said. "And because if I go down, I'd prefer it to be for what I did, not for what he did." I slid the drive into my drawer. "Then tell the board yourself." His mouth twitched. "They're meeting without me." "Of course they are." He stood there a moment longer, like he wanted to say something that belonged to the man I'd once agreed to marry. Whatever it was, he swallowed it, turned and left. I forwarded the consulting addendum to Monica with 2 edits. The internal announcement would precede my departure, and my title on the contract would be Strategic Architect. Not consultant, not advisor. Name it for what I was. Own it in daylight. Before I could close the email, a new message pinged. From Helen Coyle. "Off the record. We appreciate your restraint. Some of us are trying to rebuild this place. Your terms help that happen." I stared at the sentence. Restraint. The word chafed and soothed at once. I typed back. "Hold leadership to the standards you're asking of me. That's how you rebuild." No emojis. No flourish. On my way to the elevator, I passed the glass wall of Cashin's office. He sat alone, jacket off, hands laced behind his head, staring at nothing. The picture of a man who'd just learned that charm isn't an alibi. He didn't look up. In the lobby, the security guard nodded at me like we shared a secret. Outside, the air smelled like rain. A promise, not a threat. I texted Monica. "Add one more clause. Full release on my non-compete. If they want silence, they don't get shackles." Her reply came back almost instantly. "Already inserted." "I knew you'd ask." I laughed out loud, startling a man with a briefcase. Back at my apartment, I opened Lodestar one last time and scanned the spine of it. The emails, the version histories, the screenshots, the notes from meetings where men congratulated me in private and edited me out in public. A ledger of truth. Then I created a new document and gave it a title that felt like air after a closed room. Forward Strategy. The first bullet point wasn't about Sable and Finch at all. It was about me. Where I'd take my work. Who I'd choose to build with. What I'd refuse to accept from here on out. My phone buzzed again. Lena this time. "Is it true? They're crediting you?" "Yes," I wrote. "You don't have to whisper anymore." I closed the laptop and stood by the window watching the light change across the river. Somewhere upstairs, signatures were drying. Somewhere else, a crown had been boxed and labeled evidence. Stronger than ever isn't a banner you wave. It's a quiet decision you make and remake until it becomes the only way you move. The final signatures were inked on a Wednesday afternoon in the same windowless boardroom where this had started to turn. Monica was there, cool and composed, sliding the signed copies into her briefcase like a jeweler tucking away diamonds. When it was done, Helen stood, offering her hand. "Officially, this is an amicable parting," she said. "Unofficially, you were right to fight for it." I shook her hand. "Then keep that in mind for the next person who doesn't have a Monica." We left the boardroom together, but I took the long way back to my office, passing by Victor's closed door. A cardboard box sat outside, the flaps half open, a framed golf photo jutting out. No nameplate on the door anymore. At my desk, the company-issued laptop sat waiting for return. I powered it on one last time, not to clear it, Monica's firm would handle that, but to send a final message to the strategy team. Proud to have built alongside you. Keep asking whose work you're standing on and make sure they're in the room. See you down the road. I hit send, closed the lid and slid the machine into its case. Ethan wasn't at his desk. Word was he'd been transitioned to a different opportunity that morning, which everyone knew was code for escorted out with a severance smaller than my consulting retainer. Cashin had gone on leave. Victor was just gone. In the lobby, the security guard smiled again. Big day. Just a new chapter, I said. Outside, Austin's sky was breaking open with sunlight after 2 days of rain. I crossed Congress Avenue toward a cafe I'd been eyeing all year, ordered a coffee to stay and took a corner table. From my bag I pulled my personal laptop and opened a clean document. Sunveil Strategies went at the top in bold. My next move. No corporate glass ceilings, no borrowed titles, no one waiting to polish my work until my name vanished. A notification popped up, an email from Graham Patel. If you ever need a client, call me first. Some of us know who the architects are. I smiled and typed back, you'll be my first meeting. Before leaving I called Monica. Everything's done. I'm officially out. Out, she said, but not down. Don't forget that part. I hung up, watching sunlight streak across the table. Stronger than ever wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. And walking away not just whole but holding more than you'd had before. I closed the laptop, finished my coffee and stepped into the street without looking back at the building where it had all gone down. Let them keep their rooftop parties and borrowed crowns. I had my name, my work, my next move. And this time no one else was going to own it.